I'd like to. He's not. He's actually things.
Contact and follow up with our.
Investigation on this. So he on what Dan is someone I was trying.
It froze over again, obviously, as soon as it got cold. So, and warranty, I mean, they installed it into the warranty. I mean, I don't know if they read the warranty. At this point, I don't think so, but that's a pretty clear cut one. Where
We do. We put these people in this.
they're kind of crapped out. I think the family.
It's glue holding it together, making it pretty much.
Investigation on this.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, no,
I'd like to.
And tomorrow,
I'm British. We do Boxing Day. That's the day after Christmas. You want people to say things.
Okay.
Christmas. No. Okay. Aren't building very energy efficient houses, and
Ryan,
so just to recap, it's just OSB.
Yeah, and it's OSB and it starts to rot.
Poor man's insulation, absolutely.
And I could see the home
Stuff. What's going?
and I could see I'll take care of it.
I'm doing anything I can to try to.
Well, they probably saw it on a show or something.
Right.
I mean, if you see old farmhouses, you know, around, they'll every
They'll do similar.
they'll load up the walls with bales, you know, and all.
You'd be able to air because it's.
Be like, yeah, can you just
My
Yeah.
and
trust
for
us,
them,
you're not the only one.
$70,000. Poor man's insulation, absolutely.
You know, around build.
Similar.
They'll load up hills.
Tell that only are empty.
It could be like, yeah, it could be
However, anybody can to try to
houses.
similar.
Like,
Start.
makes sense.
I'm not all that concerned about the blower door because I don't think air leakage is what they're dealing with.
No.
I think
Well,
we're
it's
dealing.
happening, but it's not.
I think when we get up there, we'll see what's happening because we have to pull at least one of these off to at a. So that is
Nate, I think we'll be coming by.
pretty. There you go. Just got here. We're looking at the best way to move forward. I have condensation in here. I think there's a little more spa eventually. You got it. Yeah. Let me pull this.
I don't know if they do.
Exactly the same as that, which means to look at it, we're gonna have to. We would have to pull the floor up.
A gray water dumping into the ground. Okay. Yes.
Or are you also? Where have you been? And going to Westford? Question mark. Yes. Yep. Are you getting the things yet? The thunderstorms? Hello.
I just changed my mic. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, are you getting the thunderstorms?
Let me take a look. I'm not sure. I haven't.
Oh.
I was just outside mowing the grass and it was nothing. So.
Wow, it's like major thunderstorms are saying in just a few minutes in our area.
Cool. Well, we might get blown out, but yeah. Whoa! That's no joke.
Yeah.
Here, Jim.
Yeah, I'm using it. Look, I listened to my friend. I'm using the same darn thing.
Yay! Awesome. You're listening to my friend. Okay,
And
so
it's graphically colorful.
awesome. So let me see. How am I gonna do this? I've never done a. I know how to do it. I'm gonna add a. Add a. How am I gonna do this? I'm gonna add a. Let me start. It is started. So
You get a different light.
If I start playing it, though, it's gonna be all weird. It's gonna do that thing. So how do I display settings? No, that's gonna screw us up too. View normal. Oh, that's good. That works. So I'll put that over here, and that will, I think, be okay, because that's pulling that from somewhere else. Okay, so let me see. Yes, I got you, I got me, I got you. All right, I got that. Okay, good. That looks good. And now on this, I'm going to add, maybe on the two shot.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. A window capture or display capture? What is it? Window capture. Window capture for PowerPoint. There we go. Beautiful. Beautiful. And I'll just keep that unopened until I'm ready to give the presentation. Okay. That's cool. Because then that will, I can unlock that. And that will do that. And I should be able to just give the presentation. Okay, that's what we'll do. Let's start talking about the. I also wanted to have something up there about the tiny house. Let me get rid of this. We don't need this
The guy called me back for towing, but he said if it's anything above 8'6" wide, then special permits are needed. I've never heard of that.
I don't think it's more than 8'6", but we'll take a look. We'll get there.
Yeah, I'll get it. I'll take care of it tomorrow.
Okay, so this isn't right. Oh, I should just leave the participants open, and then we're perfect. Then I don't have to do anything. Okay, and the audio eavesdropping is 14 minutes, and the Katrine is 38 minutes. So I'll turn that off. Good. All right, I'm all ready to go. I'm using my another computer in the background. I also want to push the FiasCon, so I want to bring that up as well. That's why I have it in the background there. Passive house, passive house, passive house. Can you do a little more light in your room?
If I do, it's so much light. I'll show you. That's why I was just saying that I need to do something more as far as.
Oh, that's not bad. Let's see how you look.
Wait. See, it's so bright.
Oh, it's very hot on you. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just a dark, scary guy in the dungeon.
Wow.
Let's see.
Who isn't, right?
Is this one plugged in? Can it be plugged in?
Yeah, just some background light is all. That would be nice.
I'm trying.
I know. I'm not harping on you, man. Okay. Settings, hotkeys. Transition is that. Chris is that. Jim is that. And two-shot is that. Those are the ones I want. You can do all the other ones. Oops, no! Not ready yet. Why did that change size? That's so weird. Okay. Let me,
Where's your background lighting?
my background's all lit. Oh, there's some background light. Yeah, boy. Bounce it against the far wall, the one that we're not seeing. Hi. No, just against the wall. No, not. We're about to though.
Okay. Bye.
See you in a bit. Yeah, that wall, but still we can't see it if it's possible, because the reflective light should give us something. Like maybe shoot it to the. I don't know.
There.
Do ba 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 dun 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 dun. Yeah, that's not bad. We can work with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll work on this in the future. Just try to sit in the middle of your screen. There you go. Perfect. Perfect. I got you, and that's actually quite nice. Yeah, the way you have it, that's perfect. Okay. 3 minutes to touchdown. And talk a little so I can get the levels there.
Passive house. What do you mean by passive house? Are you being passive aggressive or passively efficient?
Let's turn the mic on. Hey, it's Chris West from House Calls Vermont. I had the mics off because never mind. Welcome to another episode of House Calls Vermont. It has been a crazy couple of weeks. I'll do that whole thing again. I was out on vacation, and then we threw a show together last week. Jim and I are working to try to get our production stuff for each show together well in advance, so that we look a little more together than we actually are. But we've had,
Presentation and everything, Chris.
yeah, we've had an exciting couple of weeks. For instance, a while back when we were still on the radio, we had a tiny house we were looking at. We were called to look at a tiny house that was in Burlington, Vermont. And I have a, I don't know how I'm going to get us to see this, but I've got some video I'm going to try to get up of this. I'll work on that while we're watching one of the other ones. But basically, it's a pretty cool little tiny house. Let me see. Maybe I can just really quickly throw a media source in there, and it will be the right one.
Chris,
What?
in the meantime, one thing that really struck me about the whole tiny house movement was when I first saw a documentary on some of the tiny houses and what people are looking for on Netflix. The thing that struck me is, when I was watching this, yeah, it's kind of cool. It's unique and everything else. But then I was wondering, are they giving proper deference towards building science? And is this going to create issues in the long term? That was years ago. And then here we go with this whole thing that we are called about a house that was built 3 years ago and was on TV on the HGTV channel about a new couple, and it was their first endeavor into this, and buying a new home, and they thought everything was going to be storybook, and in that process, within 3 years, they started finding that there were mushrooms in their kitchen, but their kitchen wasn't supposed to be growing the mushrooms. They were supposed to have a refrigerator. So that's when they noticed there was a real problem, and that's when we were called.
So here's the video. I've now got it up and running. This is us
It is
earlier in the
New
spring.
Year's
You can keep
Eve
talking because
on,
the audio is
December 31st,
should not be.
2020.
I'll kill the audio on the video. So this is just us going to the actual tiny house, and you'll see it in just a second. It's a nice little tiny house, but it did have some. There's Tim Healy from the Journal of Light Construction, and we're walking up, and you'll see it in just a moment. There it is in the back. You see it with the heat pump on the back, and it's approximately 280 square feet. And with that 280 square feet, after 3 years of living in it with the wrong building science being applied when it was built, we found that yes, indeed, it was suffering from some serious building science problems. So I'm just going to take a look here at this. You can see it's a trailer. It's got a heat pump on the back. Let me see. Scrub through this a little more. And we were wondering about the back of it, whether it has. Look at that, Jim. I can see it has lights. So we don't have to worry about it not having lights. It's the back of the trailer. Yeah. Sorry?
And then I'm not seeing this present.
That's okay. We'll get back to it. So this is the tiny house, and we did an entire audit for these people. When we finished with the audit, we gave them the information about what we found out. Now, basically, what's happening is the bottom of the entire trailer had been insulated with sleepers, which are 2x4s on side, with rock wool in between them, which is a fibrous insulation, and then a layer of OSB, a subflooring, and then a flooring on top of it. And what the owner saw was that there was indeed actual mushrooms growing out of the floor, and we're not kidding. This was I've got pictures of this. I'll dig them up while Jim gives a bit of exposition. So what we did is we gave them a basic list of things that had to be done to make it something that would be livable and durable into the future. And they decided to cut their losses. And Jim and I we waited a couple of months. Nobody was really interested in buying the tiny house. So we made an offer, and we've purchased this tiny house. So in about 4 or 5 weeks, we haven't decided on the exact week, we're going to be doing live broadcasting from the renovation, and we'll be taking video of the renovation, and we'll be showing what went wrong and how not to have it go wrong. This house was built by a builder in Connecticut. The builder in Connecticut was even not building with the proper building science for Connecticut.
Sure.
But he ended up putting a heat pump on it that was not rated for cold climate, which is another thing you shouldn't even. Sorry,
Wasn't rated for Jamaica.
not Jamaica Queens. Yeah, it was a heat pump that was not properly suited for the environment it was in. That broke. Fortunately, the previous owner was able to get, because it was still in warranty, was able to get the parts replaced. However, it should not be run when it's really cold out because it'll break again because it's not designed for that. So we're going to have a lot of really interesting information. There's also a Journal of Light Construction article about this particular tiny house and the problems we found with it. And we're probably going to be getting a follow-up article in the Journal of Light Construction about our retrofit. So keep your eyes open for that. Another thing behind me on the screen, October, the second week of October, is going to be the Passive House Institute US annual convention. It's going to be held in Tarrytown, New York. There's still lots of room. I just found out that the exhibitors' spaces have all sold out, so it's going to be pretty well populated. It's about an hour and 20 minutes north of New York City. Jim and I are going to come down. At least we're planning on coming down. I've registered and I've booked a room. So we're going to be there, and we're going to be broadcasting live. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have some of the biggest names in building science in the country are going to be there. John Straub will be there, Joe Stuberick, Katrine Klingenberg herself, Lisa White from FIAS, James Ortega from FIAS, builders from all over. Chris Corson, I'm sure, will be there, or would expect him to be there. Mark Rosenbaum is always there. Oddly enough, part of today's episode is an interview I did earlier this week with Katrine Klingenberg, who is the founder, co-founder, and current executive director of the Passive House Institute US. And we speak in depth about the history of the Passive House movement, how the Passive House movement has influenced the building industry in America. And nobody can, if you hate it, if you love it, it doesn't matter. You got to admit that, 15 years ago, nobody in America was talking about Passive House. Now, every time we have a discussion about building science and about building energy, Passive House is always mentioned. So stay tuned for that interview later in the show today, but also consider making your way to the Passive House conference. If you can't make it, tune into our show, and we'll be broadcasting live. We'll have a lot of interesting people to talk to, and I'm really looking forward to that.
The other thing that strikes me about this is when we come across this is what Chris and I do so often, and you could say we kind of migrated or fell into this opportunity, and now we get called on by others, is a forensic assessment of what works and what doesn't, what good intentions and what just ignorant actions will cause long term. Will it work really, really well, or will it fail prematurely and cause a lot of problems from health issues, durability issues, wasting of resources, loss of heat and energy, of course, but in lack of comfort, and then opening up the door to wood rot, of course, but also water damage, mold infiltration, or propagation, and rodents. It runs the gambit. And so we find out, with people, like I said, with the best intentions, sometimes the whole tiny house movement, they thought, well, if you build it small, you must not have to follow great building science, because trailers and motorhomes don't have to necessarily. And yet I do know.
Have you looked at a trailer home that's been in Vermont for 30 years?
Yeah, exactly. And so with that, I know there's some contractors out there. They are doing high performance modular homes. They're doing high performance tiny homes. If you look at the internet, there are some people who are doing it and with the understanding of doing it correctly. But when you're doing this as a builder who just says, well, I can build this, so I can build it smaller and sell it cheaper and produce more units. What concerns us about that is, if you're building your tiny house this way, how are you building your larger houses? Yeah, exactly. And then we get the same thing on the other side, where people say, I can't have a complete failure of my roof system and wall system and be covered with mold when my house is only 10 years old. It cost $1 million. Well, just because you spent more money on it, if you spent a lot of great money in bad places, you didn't make the right investment. And so we're trying to, as we said to Mark Caviello a few weeks ago, we're trying to prevent bad things from happening, because we get to see when bad things happening on the other side, but also when good things happen. So this is why we're wanting to get this message out and do this as an educational piece. This is why we said, you know what, let's invest some of our limited free vacation time, if you will, into this endeavor, get it documented to show people if they're going to do this, how to do it right as a builder, but also as a consumer, as a client, what to expect and what to ask for and what to look for. And not just, I've got something cute, small, and new, so it's fresh and clean. It must be great. And within 3 years, you've got a catastrophic failure. You don't want that.
Yeah, and oddly enough, Jim, I was in a design meeting with an architect and a builder the other day, and the architect is from Boston, and he was saying, yeah, I'm working with this builder, and this builder's all into the use of cellulose, but I don't see a lot of cellulose here down in Massachusetts. And I said, what are they doing? He said, well, they're spray foaming everything. I said, oh no. And I said, spray foam is a really bad idea, except where it isn't. And in most of the time, it's a bad idea. And when it isn't, is very, very specific and targeted usage, like on a rubble wall in a basement, or a perimeter joist bay, or someplace where you have a lot of weird geometry and need to cover that with something, and that's not going to be exposed to a lot of water itself, or has the drying potentials that we're looking for in assemblies. Yes. And so I told him about that house that we've spoken about a number of times on the radio and also on the show, that $1 million house up in Williston, where it was originally designed to be a scissor truss, which is, you have a roof here that's full of insulation, then they build another roof on top of it that's completely vented. It's a cold roof system. And the guy bought it and he spray foamed everything, just went to town spray foaming it, and 10 years later, the entire roof needs to be replaced. And I told him this story, and at the end of the meeting, the guy said, well, you know what? I had a builder of mine call me the other day with exactly the same problem. There was an entire ceiling, cathedral ceiling assembly where the entire thing had delaminated. Water had gotten trapped between the delaminated closed cell spray foam and created a mold factory. And the entire section of roof has to be replaced. And I said, see? And during our conversation, he was very open to making cold attics. I was like, can we do anything to make this a scissor truss? Is there any way we can make this a completely vented assembly? And he was really into it. So that was very edifying. It's not good to hear that another building has failed, but it certainly is something that we understand.
Well, so, as they said, Chris, that nobody's completely useless because they can always serve as a bad example. So if we learn from somebody else's experience, that's wisdom. If we become that bad experience ourselves, well, then that's just our own bad experience. So let's use wisdom, learn from these bad examples, and know how to go in the right direction.
Yeah. So what we're going to do right now, we want to... Oh, there's that storm that Jim said was rolling in. So if for some reason either Jim or I lose power because the storm that's coming through knocks over some power lines, then please forgive us. We'll try to get back on as soon as possible, and if we can't, then we'll post all of our pre-recorded stuff as an episode later on the YouTube channel. But right now, I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to give a short presentation on what Passive House is, because a lot of I got a call the other day, and Jim is always harping on this. I got a call from a client. The client wants to build a solar passive house in Shelburne, and I didn't have the heart yet to tell him, dude, that's not an actual thing, right? So although you can still build a solar passive house, what he really meant, I believe, is a passive house. People just get the nomenclature wrong. Solar passive was a system back in the 1990s. Hold on a second. Hello? Okay. Hi. There's nothing like live TV, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we're still hearing that term, passive solar, on a regular basis, and that's not something that we're talking about. What is it, though? I mean, that's a good question. So I have a short presentation that I've given before to clients, and I'm just going to start this presentation. Oh, that's not the presentation. Let me get the presentation. That was this. I'm thinking one of these. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can make this work, guys. Okay, I've got that. I've got that. I've got that. One of these has got to be it. Okay, let me reset this capture. That is not it. This is it. There we go. Okay. Let me transition to that and get that open. Whoa! Why am I not seeing anything now? That's great. Jim, I'll put you on. Oh, I'll put me on while I'm trying to figure this out. I don't understand what happened to that.
Okay.
I should be. I do see it. Oh, there we go. Okay, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Please forgive me for my issues with the tech. This is a presentation I've given often to clients. I'm just going to fly through it. Basically, what is a passive house? Well, in order to understand a passive house, you have to understand a little bit about the history of codes and energy codes. There are in Vermont, there's a minimum building energy code called the Residential Building Energy Standard, RBs, and that's required for all new construction. And Jim and I speak often about RBs. RBs is at this point R25 walls, R49 roofs, 3 air changes per hour, R15 on below grade walls and slab, R U.3 windows at a maximum, and things like that. Then there's the different programs. This is an old slide, so it has the Energy Star and the Building America, but Passive House is the most energy efficient of them all. Here's a graph. It's a bit old, but it still shows an old Vermont house, like if you're living in a raised ranch from the 1970s and have never done any work on it, then it's up here in the HERS ratings around 140 MMBTUs per year. The energy code is a good bit less than that, but only like 20% less than that. And then we've got some different programs, including at the very end, the Passive House. And when I show this slide, what I like to show people is what we're reducing isn't this purple thing, which is lights and appliances. We are reducing a little bit of our water heating because we're using heat pumps for that. But the biggest reduction is in that heating load, that red bit right there. So I'm going to go through. This is a great little graphic. And I want to thank AR&T Architects. They made these back in 2012, and I want to thank them for permission to use that in my presentation, and I'm using that here too. So in the 19th century, we basically built enclosures that were houses that were just the keeping the weather out, keeping the snow out, keeping the rain out, but it wasn't very good at heating. So we had these really big fireplaces, and we basically wore our outside clothes inside in order to be comfortable. So until the 20th century, when we get to the 20th century, we start using oil as a heating source instead of wood. We start having all these mechanical systems. Instead of just having one central fireplace, you have, or 7 fireplaces, which Jim and I saw in a house from the 1790s. What we have is the ability to send heat through a mechanical system all the way around your house, and that's your classic baseboard heating. That is, a big boiler or a forced hot air system, making every part of your house at least comfortable, no matter what the cost was. And the thing is that the cost was pretty big. The cost was, oh my gosh, we've got a house and we're throwing lots of energy at it to keep it warm, but it is warm and it is keeping the weather out. And now we move on to the 21st century, what we're really looking for in the future here, which is smart application of insulation, the capture of solar gains and other things in order to make a house use less energy, less purposefully created energy, a wood stove, a propane stove, a pellet stove, oil furnace, or forced hot air, whatever you're using to heat your house. Let's just not do that with and let's concentrate on the shell. So what are the pieces of a passive house design? So first of all, these are some targets that I won't be spending much time on because these are the static targets from an old standard. Now the passive house standard has targets depending on where you're living, but the air tightness is critical, and we've spoken about that a lot. So the first thing we want to do is we want to control heat loss through insulation. So we make the insulation really, really good. Depending on the size of the house, we're talking, this is a bit high, but R45 walls, R90 ceiling, R30 under the slab, and high performance windows of a U.16, which is about an R5 and R6 window. Then we control heat loss by eliminating thermal bridging. Thermal bridging is, as you can see here, of a thermal thermal imaging camera, an IR camera, taking a thermal image of a house during the heating season. You can see the bright colors, the white and the orange and the yellows. That is heat loss, and less heat loss would be the greens and the blues. So what you see here is we can just clearly see the studs in this house are losing heat faster than the insulation between the studs. And that's when Jim and I say, well, that's a thermal bridge. And if you're going to design a house from the beginning, or if you're going to do a deep energy retrofit, let's try to eliminate those. Then we've got an airtight envelope. We try to get our houses below 1 air change per hour at 50 pascals. 0.06 is the old standard. The Vermont code isn't right now 4, it's now 3. So this is an old slide, but in general you can see that the residential building energy standard is still 3 times higher than what you need for a passive house. And when we're talking about airtight envelope, they're talking about reducing the air infiltration, the uncontrolled air moving into your envelope. Then we start counting, once we have a really tight envelope as far as air tightness is concerned, and we have a really good insulation package, what we have is a thermos. And whatever's inside the thermos is going to add heat to the system, especially things that add heat. People add heat, refrigerators add heat, your television adds heat, anything that's inside your house can and does add heat. So we can capture those, and then we don't have to add heat by burning something intentionally, if we can offset some of that with the heat that is just in the house. Then we use smart orientation and windows. That the windows are super insulated, they're triple glazed, and we try to capture the heat gains when we need them, and we try to deflect them when we don't need them. So smart orientation, overhangs, outside shading to keep the heat out during the summer when we don't need it from the sun, but to capture it when we can use it in the winter. And of course, everybody who says, hey, if I'm going to be in a house that's super airtight, isn't it going to be stifling? Aren't we going to suffocate? And the answer is no. And the reason is because we apply and use a heat recovery ventilation. And that heat recovery ventilation is something that takes the warmth from the stale but warm air from inside and puts it through a heat exchanger that puts most of the heat, up to 90% of the heat from that stale air, into the fresh cold air coming in, raising that temperature, bringing in that air so that we don't have to have the heating system heat the air from outside temperature, burr, to the inside room temperature, but just from that warmer temperature to the room temperature. And to give you an example, on a day where the temperature outside is 0 degrees, and we have 70 degrees inside our house with a 90% efficiency heat recovery, then without adding any BTUs by burning a fuel, we can bring in that fresh air at about 60 degrees. So that's the kind of things we're talking about. It's a very powerful technology, and it will be more healthy indoor air quality than if you just had a regular house with 3 air changes per hour. So when we add all those together, we get a passive house. You know, the insulation, the air tightness, the internal heat gains, the solar heat gains, and the heat recovery ventilation. And then, of course, whatever need you have left, you use some kind of heating system to add that. And what do we get? We get about 90% reduction on heat loads compared to code. We have about a 70 to 80% reduction in overall energy demand, superior indoor air quality, superior occupant comfort, lower energy cost, and a smaller carbon footprint. And to say how much would you save, this is a good look. This is a slide that I got from Fishing, Vermont. It is a bit outdated, but with what it is an old code house, and then what the losses are, what the reductions are in the usage based on certain applications. So you just have a code house, you do new massing and window location, which is the orientation where the windows are. Use a really good window, it reduces that heating loss more. You eliminate the thermal bridges a little more, the air tightness is a little more. You add passive house insulation with heat pump. You add solar hot water if you're going to do that, and finally you have a passive house that uses very little energy. And the last thing I wanted to show you is a couple of examples. This is a house built in Charlotte. This house had 3 occupants at the time of the monitoring. It's another thing with passive house, we like to monitor them. When this house was being occupied, it was 2 teenagers and their mother. This is the entire mechanical system. Here's the HRV. Here is a solar hot water collector, and there's also an electric hot water heater that also adds to the heating. And this is a great graph because basically what it's saying is during the year of 2011, from December 12th to December 31st, the month of December 2011, the outside temperatures were doing this. So we're at 30 degrees, we're at 15 degrees. But the indoor temperatures are staying very much the same. And that is because of that airtight and insulation package. That means that the actual house will just glide through temperature changes, where a normal house would see the temperature changes, and once the thermostat saw that it was getting too cold, would turn the heat pump or the boiler or whatever on, and it would heat it until it was satisfied that it was hitting that number, and then the house would leak energy again, and then it would come back on. So it's on and off. And you can see that the heat pump, this is the heat pump coming on and off. It is coming on and off, and certainly more coming on when the temperatures are lower, but in general, it's pretty much a very easy gradient there on the temperatures on inside. These are all the temperatures. The orange dot is the living room, and the coldest one up here is the upstairs bedroom number 1. And the difference between the two, now this only has a single heat pump hanging on the wall in the living room, is about a 5-degree temperature differential, which we consider to be very acceptable. And the indoor air quality is excellent. There are a couple of examples. This is exactly the type of graph. We were monitoring the indoor air quality. There are some cooking events here, but in general, the indoor air quality in carbon dioxide parts per million is really good. And the monthly cost depends on the month, but in general, this is the monthly utility cost, and this is not just the heating cost. This is also the plug load, so your computers, your televisions, your lighting, all of that stuff is in this. And so on the average, this house, the utility costs for the entire year are something on the order average of about $100 a month throughout the entire year. And this is comparison to Energy Star. I'm not worried about that. Here are 3 houses. Here's the one I was just talking about. There are 2 more houses built to similar standards, and the 3 houses are all very good. There's another passive house just showing that passive house can be anything. This is my favorite story there. This is a house in Norwich, Vermont. It's a passive house. It is a vacation house, and we're monitoring this house, and that house, nope, I don't have the graph on that. I apologize for that. These pictures are basically, this particular house was being monitored. There was no one living in it. It was minus 20 degrees outside the house. Inside the house, it was 50 degrees with no internal heat gains on. The sun comes up and the house warms to 60 degrees without anything. So this is the proof in the pudding that for a passive house, you don't necessarily have to. Now I need to put me back in. I'll put me up here like this. Sorry about that, guys. I'm still learning how to use this. I'll now put Jim and me back. There we go. Welcome back, Jim. That was my bit about the passive house.
Hey, Chris. Yep, definitely. And it is something to be said about the fact that if you are in a very cold climate zone 6, climate zone 5, that you could be in really cold weather and the power could go out for days. And there was nobody in there. And what people don't realize is that when you're inside one of these homes and you're an individual with that, you're still breathing and you still have a temperature, you're a 100-watt heater. And so I've always joked the fact that, okay, when you build your new house and you have that housewarming party and you invite your friends over, you actually have a housewarming party because you're going to be adding to that thermal benefit of the house. And it really is going to be comfortable and safe. I mean, so that it's not just protecting, saving energy, protecting the durability of the house and the building materials, but also the occupant. So if you get into a really extreme weather event, you're not going to have to go, fire up a generator and possibly risk your health and safety. So it's a really amazing assembly when you look at the whole thing.
Yeah, and if you have a 1,500 watt load on your house, you can have 15 friends over and you're heating your house. Right?
There you go.
And some of these houses are that low. Some of them do have extremely low, 4,000 BTU per hour kind of loads. Some of them, of course, the larger the house, the larger the load, even when you put passive house principles in place. But that's my presentation. I always found it very compelling, but of course I wrote it, so that may not be the best advertisement. I did get jobs after giving this presentation to clients, so I think that it was at least a little convincing to some people.
Sure.
So we're gonna go to some recorded footage right now. The part 3 of our audio eavesdropping. This is the one with the blower door. The episode in which what is it? Ross does the blower door. I'm sorry, that's from Friends. That's cheesy. So stick with us. We're about to go, and after that we're going to jump back on and talk for a minute. But then we're going to have that great interview with Katrine Klingenberg from the Passive House Institute US. So please, I hope you enjoy.
So Raptors 2x6.
2x6. Yep.
How old is spacing?
Jeez, Jim, it's got to be 16s. I didn't. He's asking me, and I should know, right? I'm just so fascinated by how this is all. Okay, finally, the last bit here. Yeah, that's 16s. So it's 2x6 to 6 is 16 on center.
16 on center.
So that should be fine for snow load, even with this relatively low pitched roof. You're welcome, Jim. That's why we do it together. We make sure the other doesn't forget something.
Right, you guys stay on.
And talk with each other. It's usually with a bit of teasing involved, but that's all good.
And ribbing.
Ribbing, teasing.
No backstabbing.
No, we're good that way. So Jim is setting up the blower door. I'm just going to put this here and...
I'm just looking at the thermostat here, and if I'm reading this correctly, it says off, which makes me wonder about...
What it means is that it's the
Pilot.
pilot light that's causing all that heat.
An aggressive pilot light.
That's
Super
amazing
aggressive.
amount of heat from a pilot light.
Yeah.
Well, even a propane stove, like an insert, uses 70 gallons of propane for the pilot light alone. And that has so many BTUs. Sure. So the pilot light that is. Yep, it says off. It should mean it's off. Okay. 1 center, 2x6 roof rafters.
One thing we need to start doing is taking photos of
The actual test.
yeah, because that pushes the rise out.
Oh, they're not just going to take our word for it?
Exactly.
But you know what's funny about that, Jim, is we could totally game that system if we were jerks, right? We could just find a setting where we're getting the blower door number we want and take a picture of that. Do they also want us to take a picture with a background of the house? So you need a bit of framing so that it can tell you're not all in the same...
As the one comedian said, why are people so obsessed with weight? Just pick the weight you want, get on the digital scale, and get off when it gets there. Then everything's fine.
So this is the brand new tech. This is that's the standard blower door and the gym and the shroud. And here's the new electronic manometer. It's just absolutely awesome.
They're not making new models of me.
You made a couple of copies, not straight up copies. But...
No. Slight modifications.
Without the abusive parents.
Yeah.
So we start out by getting the baseline pressure, and that's what that's reading right there, that minus 1.2, 1.3. And once that stabilizes after 20 seconds, as long as it's in like 0.1 or 0.2 of that
Pascals, yep.
in pascals, that means that we're not going to have wild variation.
But this is windy outside, so I had to
put it in the bag?
It's in the bag.
It's in the bag. So the outside of that tube is in the bag to try to cut down on changes in pressure due to wind, which here we are on Isle La Motte, one of the windiest parts of the state. And now we're going to do a full open.
I think it's pretty safe to say he needs it.
I think it's probably going to go full open. And I think we're looking at, I'm going to say 2,500 CFM at 50
I'm
pascals.
going to say 35 to 4.
Whoa! Super leaky.
But it doesn't have a basement, so I could be completely off.
Well, there are some architects that don't even count the basement because nothing leaks through a basement. Oh yeah, I can feel it. Oh, Jim wins. I buy lunch. 3,600. So this has an extrapolating program in it. So as long as you're within a couple points of 50 pascals, it'll extrapolate it up.
Yeah, that's the left-hand number that we're seeing here. Yeah.
So the left-hand number is the pascals, and the right-hand number is the cubic feet per minute.
And so I think it 3,500 is pretty
A
weak.
very high number.
We're building houses now that you'll get under 100 CFM.
Under 100.
Yeah.
So this is 35, 36 times more leaky than what we could do.
Can you give me a 10-second average, please?
Sure, yes, sir.
Like the average, it'll tell us a 10-second running average, and that's the number we'll write down for the test. And then I'll do the analysis of volume 3594. We have a winner. Okay, so now we have a blower door number, and what does that mean? What?
3654.
3654. We're calling that the number. So, what does that actually mean? 3649 is where I was at. I'm just going to hold that. So now that we have a blower door number, how do we turn that into a useful number? Well, it in and of itself is a useful number. What we're doing is we're depressurizing the house, which means we're sucking air through all of the gaps. All the windows are closed, all the doors are closed. This is just the air that the difference in pressure we're creating with the blower door is sucking through the gaps around the windows, at the base where the building attaches to the slab, and the top pressure plane, also known as the attic flat. So what I have to do in order to turn that into a number I can actually use is I have to get the volume of the house, and once I have the volume of the house, I can calculate how many air changes per hour at 50 pascals this house is, and that's an easier way to relate that to what code requires. And it also gives a baseline for what reduction we might get if work was done on the house in order to qualify for subsidies. You have to have a 35% reduction in order to get air sealing subsidies. The good news is on a house like this is that there's a lot of room for opportunity. That's not something any homeowner wants to hear, but it's good news actually. I'm gonna go get my computer and then I will do the measurements. Let me see the other doors here. Get to do a long walk around. And it's raining some more. Oh, that's so good. It's been so dry this summer that we're really glad that we get a good rain. It's not even a good rain. It's nimbus stratus rain, which is okay. No heavy downpours, just light all the way through. So I got to get my computer because I'm going to have to draw and sketch up a model for the volume so I can understand it. Now this building is pretty simple. It's just two boxes attached to each other, so I could probably do it without using the computer to calculate it, but I prefer using the computer because then I have a model that I can get areas off of for when we're working and putting together pricing for air sealing and things like that. So we'll just go ahead and do a bunch of measuring And once we have all the measurements, I'll put them into a SketchUp modeling computer, and then I can use that diagnostic information we got from the blower door test, and that will tell us exactly where we're at. Okay, so, right. So let's do some measurement. And let's get some measurements. All right.
I don't know if the bath fan in this bathroom is vented to the outside.
I saw it. It goes to the attic.
Okay. So it goes straight up in the roof? Through the roof?
I didn't see where it came out, but I did see it on the outside. So we'll have to take another look at that. But yes, if it, before we close the attic up, we definitely want to take a look at that. So I've got this electronic distance finder, and that allows for me to get good measurements. So we've got a general morphology of the building. We've got this bump out. Ceiling height. Okay, now we're going to move and do the rest of the width. We do have an interesting thing here where we have a slant. So that's the outside ceiling. And Jim is walking around with the infrared. And this height is hopefully the same as that. Signature. 8'9". It is not. And that changes when? It changes here. $14 foot.
The walls don't look great as far as thermally speaking.
What's your focus, please?
There we go.
Are they just poorly insulated, or?
What it appears to me, Craig, is that on these walls in this living room, is that that's what it is. I'm not saying anything structurally. It just looks like there's heat signatures in there that, and then modeling, if you will. So different temperature variables. If the wall is a perfect assembly, then what it would be is you see an even temperature, not a variegated.
Yeah.
Because right now you can see that. See the warmer spots?
Yes.
And then the cooler spots. So the cooler being purple, yellow being warmer.
Yep. So those may just be areas where there's lack of insulation.
Or if it's there, it could have been original to the house. And because see, up in the attic, there's fiberglass on top of a more degraded type of insulation. And if they use the same in the walls, it's there, but it's no longer functional.
Mm-hmm.
Fiber's type of insulation, the way that it achieves its insulation value is it has all these lofted fibers that are supposed to fill the whole cavity that will capture the warm air molecules and stop that temperature swing.
Mm-hmm.
When air moves through that, or they compress over time, then they can't lock the same amount of.
I said that to you. Okay.
Please.
So,
Contact her with Elisa's information that I'm going to send you right now.
so we usually get payment on day of. Do you have a payment, or are we going to need to invoice you? We can invoice you. We understand that your brother is the person who's doing this.
Yes, he's actually the one that's paying for it. You'll get paid right away. He's
Sure.
perfect.
No problem.
You'll have no worries, and I didn't expect anything today.
No, our going rate right now is 100 chickens.
100 chickens.
Yep.
We usually
No roosters.
No roosters. We
All
gotta have
hens.
laying hens.
Don't say chickens then. Y'all end up with all roosters. Okay, well that was episode 3 of 4 of the audit eavesdropping. That one had the blower door in it. And we'll be having the 4th and final installment of that particular episode next week when we're finishing that up. That's a very interesting building, right? That single level ranch. 20 air changes per hour that building is. When a brand new building, the maximum air leakage allowed is 3 air changes per hour at 50 pascals. So quite a lot of opportunity for improvement there. And things that make that difficult. Like they had, when they built it, they strapped the ceiling, which means that you've got your roof joist like this, and then they put strapping, a 1x strapping under that, and then they put the sheetrock under that, meaning that getting a good air seal with just going along and finding the top plates of framing and other penetrations, you can't do that. You've got to do a complete skim coat to get a good air seal on
and
that.
that's also because they had some of those staple-on tiles that weren't even sheetrock, and so those are notoriously leaky. And so, like Chris said, you take that down and put a contiguous barrier or an air seal, and then do your air sealing insulation, or you do have to do the skim coat of foam. But then you're kind of locked in at that point with that
ceiling.
material.
Absolutely. If you want another ceiling after that, you really have to put you have to put something on the bottom of that. It's literally on top of, but when we're looking up, sometimes at the bottom. You know what I mean? And after we're done looking at the 4th bit of that audit eavesdropping, we'll talk about what we found at that building and what we ended up recommending to be done. So we'll go over that next week. But for right now, we're going to segue into the interview with Katrine Klingenberg. Katrine Klingenberg, I do a whole introduction, but I'll just say it now. She's the German-born founder, a co-founder of the Passive House Institute US. She lives in Chicago and has been one of the main driving forces behind the development and expansion of the Passive House standard in the United States. So give a listen, and we'll jump back in after it's over. Hi, this is Chris West for House Calls Vermont. Welcome to another interview. Today we're going to be speaking with Katrine Klingenberg. She's the founder or co-founder and current executive director, if I have that right, of the Passive House Institute US. And we're going to be speaking with Katrine about the Passive House movement, about Passive House Institute US, also known as FIAS, and where we've been going with super insulated buildings, how it's influenced codes in America, which I think it actually has had quite an effect on codes in some states. I'm sure we can find a couple states that are not doing that. But welcome, Katrine, to our humble little home.
I'm really honored that I get to be here with you, Chris, today. So I'm excited and looking forward to hearing your questions.
Great. So I'm going to start off very simply and very basically, just very broad, brushy. What is Passive House and why should we care?
What is Passive House? That is a broad question. I think just in a nutshell, for just everybody to understand, it's really a set of design principles and building science and construction technologies that really any building can benefit from. So top of the list, of course, is, as the name says, passive. Any methods or principles that help conserving energy. So such as that, this is insulation, front and center. We also use some of the passive solar gains. That's still like a little bit of a carryover from the good old passive solar days, but in the modern passive building days, not so much solar, right? Because we have heating and cooling needs these days. So we really need to balance the two for best results. We want an envelope that is absolutely airtight. Some people get scared by that because they say like, hey, the building has to breathe. But so the good news is that only the opaque elements are supposed to be airtight. So that means that the air that we're bringing in, that comes in through intentional openings, and that's actually way healthier. So the good old days where fresh air came in through cracks, not such a good idea. Comes in through insulation and that kind of stuff. So what else? Thermal bridging, anything else in the envelope that might conduct heat more than the rest of the envelope is a bad idea. Like, for example, like steel going through the envelope is like a super raceway for superhighway for heat loss. So you also want to eliminate those things. And that is it in a nutshell. If you follow those principles, you will end up with some very nice building components. Your wall will be much nicer, and the envelope will be more insulated. The windows will be more insulated. The frames of the windows will close more tightly. So all higher quality, and the end result of all those different principles is that your building is more energy efficient, of course, but maybe more importantly to just everybody, it's also more comfortable and healthier, and it will also help you to coast through power outages. That's really maybe kind of like the secret that not too many people know about, right?
Especially when we're seeing more of those around. Yeah, we talk a lot about building science principles, and both Jim Bradley and I have been trained through FIAS. Jim's a certified passive house builder through FIAS, and as you can see through my various FIAS things, I'm a long and die-hard member of the Kool-Aid drinkers, as it were. And I got my first training in 2011 down in New York City, from you personally, and also from a number of people at Parsons who are helping you do that at the time. And one of the things we stress when we're talking to people about building science in general, and Passive House as kind of like the ultimate application of building science principles, is that buildings are systems. You can't touch something in one part of the house and not have it possibly, not always, but possibly affect how something else in the house is performing. What you moved to the United States, if I remember correctly, just a little bit of history, 2005 was it?
It was in 1994. Full disclosure.
So you were just bumming around until no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, very funny. No, I was going to school in Berlin, so I was getting my undergrad there, and then came over here to do my master's.
Okay, and that was in Chicago?
That was actually in Muncie, Indiana, Ball State University of all places.
Wow.
which at the time, I mean, it always stuns people, but at the time it was one of the only universities in the US that had started to put the focus on sustainability. So very interesting. For a couple of years there, they were the leaders. So, yep.
And in the early 2000s, when did you start thinking about setting up a Passive House Institute in the United States?
Well, that was preceded by building my own home. In 2002, I embarked on that process, and it was personal motivation. After political change yet again, the climate goals had been pushed out of the way again. For me, that was always a priority. Pending climate change and emissions reduction. I mean, if you believe in climate change or not, it doesn't really matter. I just figured like, well, hey, we know how to do it and how to build great buildings. It'll benefit everyone. And if we can, on top of it, make sure that the emissions are down, then we don't take any risk. Like, what if it is true, right? So I decided to build the first Passive House in Champaign-Urbana. And that was a great success. Eye-opening experience, because once you have a project, you can actually ask policymakers, the mayor and the city council, to come in and come by and check it out and see and feel and realize how great it is. So I had people from the first city council group saying like, well, this is a great building, and also have a question. Like, I have severe allergies, and like, since I'm in this building, my allergies are way less extreme. So what is up with this building? Why is that, right? So very cool. People can actually experience how quiet it is, how comfortable it is, and like also how good the air quality is, filtering pollutants out. So at that point we were like, wow, this is really great. This would be a great solution for affordable housing, and we started as a nonprofit housing development organization originally to bring those benefits to folks who really need it. So giving people a better chance to actually maintain their mortgage, not to default on it, whatever, put more money in their pocket, be like safer that way, right? And maybe have like some extra money left to buy a new baseball glove for the kid.
Right.
So that was a really great concept, and that's how we started. And we built the first few passive houses in Champaign-Urbana. And once we had 3 of them on the ground, we're like, wow, this is really cool. And at that point, people started finding us. we weren't advertising or anything. They just came to us. Like the DOE knocked on the door, said like, well, it's really cool what you guys are doing. Can we monitor and like write about your projects? Well, sure, come on in. Tell us how to install the monitoring equipment, and we'll do it. So that way we kind of got roped into the DOE process, started working with the different building science organizations and the different national labs. And eventually people were like, hey, can you put your learnings together and start doing training? We're like, yeah, I guess we could do that. And that's when the first training started in 2008 in Champaign-Urbana. And then by 2010 or 11, I forget which year you took the training.
I took the training in 2011, but I was the second group, if I remember correctly.
Yep. So and that developed really organically. We never really advertised. So obviously there was a big pent up demand, and people were really looking for those solutions. And that led to the Passive House Institute US.
and in the what we're talking now since 2011, we're spot on 10 years. Call it 11 or 12 since the first trainings. The Passive House Institute US has expanded its programs, has looked at starting with the basics that were instituted by the Passive House Institute in Germany, and then expanded it by saying not every climate is German, and not every climate that has similar temperatures as Germany have the same exterior conditions all year round. So we just can't build like everything is in Germany, unless you live either in Germany or Holland or in that little strip of America that is like that most of the year. That was a big break with the rest of the Passive House community, and there's I personally think that it was a very good move to start looking at climate-specific building. I remember you telling a story once about a building that was built in Louisiana. I think you called it the mold house, if I remember correctly. I may be inventing that, but in the time since you've had been running the Passive House Institute US, how many people have been trained as Passive House consultants? Do you think off the top of your head?
Well, we are well into like the 3,000 upper end of people having been trained. So the number of certified Passive House consultants that maintain certification, that's a little bit of a smaller number. That's about like 1,000. And then of course there are the builders. In the following years after 2008, we added the builders training, the builders exam, builders certification. And then in 2011, we also added the verify and the radar
Right, the
training
QA/QC.
and examination,
Yeah.
because we learned very quickly that like you can design a absolutely bang out perfect project, but if you don't assure that it's actually being constructed the way it was specified, the building is not going to perform. So and at the Institute, we're really adamant about getting performance data back, because as you mentioned, we keep upgrading and updating and making our framework better. So for that one, we do need to get the data back from folks who are employing the technology, so that we can then in turn upgrade our algorithms, make our modeling tool better, make our processes for certification better, the quality assurance processes, all of that, right? So we really want to be as good as we can. And right now we're right about like plus minus 7% modeled versus measured, and I think this is absolutely industry leading amongst all other modeling tools, measured results as far as I know. So,
and that just throwing the name out there in case people are wondering, you're talking about the Wolfie passive software.
Yes.
And that's a static modeling software, and for people who don't know what the difference is between static and dynamic, is dynamic, you're basically looking, if you can, minute per minute through a year, taking data and applying that to the status of the building and seeing how that works. But what we found, and of course please correct me if I'm wrong, is that level of granularity is not necessary. We can still, with static modeling, get within 7% of the actual in the field performance without that level of specificity, which makes it cheaper. I mean, part of I remember I was doing a Passive House project for the PHI, and one of the things that the client had an issue with is that PHI was asking for these ridiculous things, for these teeny bits that were, I had to charge them money to do the modeling consulting for, and the client is like, "What, are you really kidding me? Another 3 months of this? No, come on, let's get this going." And I think it's really, it really is a huge important point to say, and I think you've pointed this out during a number of the trainings I've been out, is that optimization. We've got to find the sweet point. Yeah, you can make an R300 roof, but what's that actually getting us in the end, right? So you mentioned the Department of Energy. One of the things that I want to talk to you about is the almost oversized role that the Passive House Institute US, that FIAS has played in engaging with the Department of Energy and in the adoption of changing in codes across states. I'm on the advisory board for the Vermont state code adoption, which is every 3 years. And I've been in that process for the last 9 years. And you cannot say the word Passive House without everyone in the room knowing what we're talking about. Now, they may roll their eyes and say, "Oh my gosh, you're going way too far." But they know what it is. We have, through your leadership and through the work that you and the Passive House Institute people have done, and of course now I'm going to get a phone call on a phone I don't use. Give me just a second. And that was such a good point. Yes, I will answer it, and then I will hang up. Good. Let me see if I can get that lead in again. So one of the things I'm really interested in is how almost oversized an effect the Passive House Institute US, the FIAS, not only the organization yourself in working with the Department of Energy, but also your various acolytes, myself included, who have been in on these discussions when we're doing state revisions of the codes. Can you tell me a little bit about how that developed and where we're at right now with the Department of Energy? I mean, we have a carve out for ASHRAE 62.2 as far as direct venting bathrooms and kitchen hoods. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, that was a really important decision, actually. So it started with us looking at ResNet at the time, the Residential Energy Network, in an effort to partner up with an organization that is US based and follows the best practices that have been put forward and researched for many, many years by the Department of Energy. And that was ResNet. And we were interested in their skilled raters and verifiers. They were already at a very high level. So we figured, well, we only have to train folks a little bit, and they're going to be ready to verify and quality assure our projects. So through that MOU, we learned like, wow, there's a lot of benefit to actually partner with them, for one, because it's a huge network, right? They are well connected, and B, partner with the Department of Energy, because if the Department of Energy looks at us and says like, well, yeah, your processes, they are worthwhile supporting and promoting, hey, we have immediately basically like someone who says like, yep, those guys, we sign off on them. There's no more guessing in it, right? We have been acknowledged in that already established world of high performance building. So and at the same time, we also partner with Building Science Corporation. So it was a strategic partnership building that led to then our work with Building Science Corporation to actually not only say like, well, this thing that was developed over there in Germany, that is really great, and just take our word for it. We actually started to embark on like validating it under a grant from the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy would not just have signed off on it. We did the
Well, we'd hope they wouldn't, right? I mean, unfortunately, they didn't.
Exactly. And they didn't. So they said like, well, show us. And we did. In 2015, we came out with the report published by NREL on the very first worldwide climate-specific passive building standards that were also cost optimized. Now, that was the first step away from the framework of one size fits all that we had inherited originally from the Germans, right? So that was really, really crucial. And for DOE, that was totally logical because remember Joe Stiebrick and like whatever the climate-specific design guides that he published, DOE, ResNet, codes, they all are climate-specific. So it's not even a question for them. For them, the one size fits all was weird. So essentially, that harmonization that we then embarked on, that was really the key to get into the door. And we ever since have continued on that path. So in 2018, we continued to refine the standards yet again. And this time not only for like a medium-sized single-family building, because in the meantime we had learned that it's really important to also take massing into account, like a different building typology. Yeah. Again, the balancing between heating and cooling is very different for a big building than it is for a small building. So those effects had to be figured into those energy standards that we now feel very, very confident about. And those energy standards are not one size fits all. They're custom targets by climate, by building typology, and optimized by cost. And we can do this these days because we have supercomputing. Initially, in the early days, code officials would say like, oh, no, don't do custom targets, way too complicated. But now that we have that supercomputing power, we were able to generate a fairly easy to use calculator for an architect who doesn't have to know all the back stuff in the back, like all the complexities. They just go onto our website, like find their climate zone, and then put in how big their building is, and then the calculator spits out the design criteria, a total of 4, and then at the end a final total energy target, and that's what you design to. And that's, as you mentioned earlier, that really helps to make the whole design more affordable, because before the energy models were really expensive. Specialized engineering firms were doing those. And hell no, for a single family home, nobody was able to afford this.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, like, we have a system that allows actually an architect to like start looking at the energy performance from the beginning, has that run in the background, can get feedback on their design. Is it still meeting my energy targets? And I'm still looking like I still have a really cool design, so I can start optimizing these. And that was really the draw for me as an architect too. I wanted to be able to do that, not have to pay someone tons of money. I wanted to integrate that into my design process without having to think about all the building science and hydrothermal and difficult calculations and all that kind of stuff. So that's really the key why it has gotten so successfully into codes, because not only do we have the right indicators now to guide design, the sweet spot that you mentioned earlier, on the path to zero, that's really our big objective here. But we also have a methodology that is super cost effective. And the architect can easily incorporate it, and bingo. So now we see multifamily projects like the one behind me here, the Finch Cambridge project in Boston, that was built for an additional cost of 1.4% additional cost. That's totally within the contingency. Yeah. And that's before incentives. And we see this happening over and over and over again. So we proved our point. We proved that it works in different climates and for building different building typologies. And that's why the codes are now like all paying attention, codes and policymakers.
Yeah. Incidentally, yesterday, one of my multifamily projects got through pre-certification. So the second phase, it was a complicated thing over here in Hanover, New Hampshire, and with the final chat with James Ortega, who is the the certification manager, I was able to give him the last 3 bits of information and get the pre-certification. And I've been very fortunate to be able to be involved with a number of multifamily projects here in Vermont. And the data is clear on the cost. The first one, Elm Place, that was 2% more than what they were expecting to pay on any other type of building. So I think the proof is certainly in the pudding on that. And the fact that when we're talking in the code meetings, we constantly talk about optimizing, because I'm in the room with builders who are saying that I can't do that, that's too expensive. And then someone from the passive house side comes up and says cost of ownership. Let's look at the lifetime cost of ownership of a building. If you are a person on a fixed income and you have a house that has a high fuel usage, but fuel costs are low, once fuel costs go up, you're going to be impacted by that. And if you have a house that's got very low energy use, not only will your energy costs before inflation of energy costs be smaller, but as they go up, because they're so small incrementally, your out-of-pocket losses for the increase in the fuel will be much smaller. That's what you were intimating when you were talking about affordable housing and having people be more economically stable living in a house that's built to the passive house standard.
Exactly.
You've also spawned quite a number of local, almost passive house things. I mean, I'm sure you know about Efficiency Vermont. Peter Schneider and Jeff Gephardt were in your first class. And Peter Schneider developed the high performance tier program for Efficiency Vermont, which is a proscriptive set of R values for the roof, the walls, the efficiencies on the ERV, air tightness requirements, all of that. And there's been a huge number of those built here in Vermont, and they're almost passive houses, and they are absolutely based and inspired by the FIAS model. And so even if we start counting all the projects that have been passive house certified, we're kind of missing the ball on how effective and influential FIAS has been in the country on changing the way we build. And I have clients who call me all the time who say, you know, Chris, I don't want to build a certified passive house, but I'd like for it to be a really good house. I'm like, I got you back. I'm not, here to make sure FIAS gets certification dollars. It's not my job. My job is building science applied to your building and worrying about durability. And now when I talk to builders, I started, I want to say 11 years ago, hanging out with the Vermont Home Builders Association, which for the longest time was a stalwart against any kind of development of applying building science. And now we're all talking about it. And it did take 10 years. And there are still members of the association that are like, poppycock. But those are in the minority now. They really are. What's going on? I could talk to you for days. But I also only have about a 45-minute interview time for my show. So what I'd like to do is just ask you, where are we at right now? What's Passive House doing now? I know that we just, the Passive House Institute US just unveiled a new standard. We went to Passive House 2021. Exactly. New logo is starting to break through. And for the first time, a prescriptive path along the Passive House single family and duplex. So give us a little bit about what's going on now with that. You also definitely plug the conference, which is in Tarrytown this year. What's going on with Passive House right now?
Wow, it's a really incredibly exciting time, and we're all catching our breath at the Institute because things are accelerating so quickly right at the moment. It is really amazing. So when the pandemic hit, we were all not really certain where this would go and where it would take us, right? But turned out that it was actually a good moment to take a breather and retool everything. And things kept going, and we actually doubled staff during that period. So we're now nearing 20 employees.
Wow.
And we needed them.
Yeah.
We needed them probably before too. We were all trying to wear way too many hats. And sorry to all you guys who were trying to certify. But that year really gave us an opportunity to retool and reorganize and make ourselves as efficient as possible, so to respond to the market changes. So and to go back to what you said previously, like really a FIAS's mission, or like the goal of the organization's market transformation, right? It's not to rake in like certification fees or whatever what you just mentioned. Success in Vermont, as far as I can tell, like yes, you guys totally like took the principles, you started to live and breathe them, you put them into like your regular practices. No, seriously, what Peter did is amazing, right?
And I remember being at a number of conferences where we had 20 people from Vermont at a 150 person conference. Per capita, we were way overrepresented.
Totally. And it's like, this is so awesome, right?
Yeah.
So totally cool. And also the whole idea of like pioneering the prescriptive path. You mentioned like our new update in 2021 has for the first time now a prescriptive path only for single family and for townhouses.
Yeah.
And Peter was ahead of the times, again, the Vermonters, showing the way. For single family and smaller residences, you actually are safe to give people prescriptive targets, and you get like very much like into the same vicinity as if you do like a full energy model. So and because the single family homes, they have a little bit of an additional upfront cost associated with them. So it's a different story for single family in terms of cost than for multifamily, what we discussed earlier. And to keep the not just the certification, but the design process as affordable as possible is really important. So you need the radar. I hope that the federal tax credits are coming back. So if people build new homes, the radar now can actually certify to the FIAS standards by applying the prescriptive path. We still recommend like an energy model, of course. And if you want to take the home to zero, you still have to do a WOFI passive model. But again, we're on the right path here to try to make the design process cheaper for single family homes. Now, so with all the updates to the standard and driving the market transformation in the country by getting fees accepted into various state and municipality codes, we were able to really drive our goal forward. And in 2021, we've done another really important new thing that we've always been working towards. You can show your shirt again. The whole passive building principles. They are really, the intent here is to find the most cost-effective way to get to zero. And again, from a climate perspective, from an emissions down perspective, we really need to get to because missing the term. Anyway, we need to get as close to zero as possible in our buildings and in our built environment. And so net zero buildings are actually really where we have to go to. And FIAS 2021 actually flipped the switch. And now we have only 2 certifications. We have the original certification, Passive Building Principles, which is called FIAS Core. In the process of rebranding, we have learned so many lessons. We're now really setting sail to reach that overarching goal of getting to zero energy buildings. And we can do this now. They are cost effective, they are feasible, they are totally here. So we have designed those 2 certification programs, the core program. This is essentially like we did it before. And then now we have added the FIAS Zero program. You might remember we had a FIAS Source Zero program, but that was confusing to people, and we didn't really we didn't figure out just yet how to account for offsite renewable energy production. So people out there don't get scared. Like FIAS Zero doesn't mean you have to be self-sufficient and produce all your energy on site, because in some cases that just doesn't work. You have a not very beneficial site, like in a city, you don't get enough solar, your roof is too small, all these things. So now you can get to a net zero balance by basically have as much PV as you like. It probably makes good sense to have some batteries and have some for resiliency, but you don't have to have massive amounts of PV. It's more affordable to buy SRECs, solar renewable energy credits elsewhere, or to have like an offsite stake in a community solar farm or something, right? Yeah. So there are multiple different ways how to zero out your emissions on site. So that was a big step forward, and setting sail for the new logo and the rebranding. So what is behind that? We are coming out with a new and expanded vision, same fears, same diligence, same science-based, same based in passive principles. But now, as we have realized that our buildings work really, really well, and we got the data now, they are resilient, they are super energy efficient, they can easily get to zero. So there has been a new opportunity that has emerged out of all that. And that is that the building really becomes a crucial building block for the new renewable energy grid. And that sounds maybe out there right now, but these passive buildings, they, aside from being resilient, it has to do with that. They can actually store energy and they can coast, they can shift loads, they can do things that are really beneficial to the new grid. Because imagine like everybody is now getting gung-ho about electrification, and all of a sudden all that load that was on gas before is being put on like the grid that is already strained. The grid can't handle that. So
certainly not in Texas.
No, well, and elsewhere neither.
Absolutely.
So if everybody else switches over, like this is going to be impossible mathematically. It's just like not doable. So these passive buildings are really, really kind of like almost like the secret recipe, the secret sauce to a new renewable energy grid. And we're starting to look at the synergies between the grid design and the building itself. The DOE calls that GEB, GEB. They have an initiative on that one for piloting purposes right now. We came out recently with a webinar, Lisa Wythe, that was called the FIAS GEB. Same thing, GEB stands for Grid Interactive Energy Efficient Buildings. And that means that the building has the benefit to the grid. And now we need to find out how to account for those benefits, how to rate the building given those benefits, and to hopefully maybe quantify what the monetary benefits are for the grid too, so that we can make the construction more cost effective if we can credit the building with that benefit to the grid, right? So that's what the rebrand is about. You mentioned earlier the building is a system. The building is also a system in the wider sense if you bring the grid in. And that's what that little loopy thing symbolizes. We're still firmly planted in the P in the middle, that little negative space that looks like a key. Passive building principles are still the key. And then let's get to uncovering all the synergies between the adjacent systems and make it as efficient and as beautiful and cost effective as possible. So that's what the rebrand is.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the term that I've heard used for that is microgrid or integrated local distributed battery backup or things of that sort. I mean, I remember probably 5 or 6 years ago seeing some of the solar decathlon houses have the ability for your electric car either to be charged by the house or to charge the house depending on the need at that particular moment.
Exactly.
So these, very exciting times. I bought a raised ranch in 1976. I'm sure you saw my presentation at Nessie that time. Completely 100% electric. And as of next week, we're going to be putting up a solar panel array, and we will be net zero, including our electric car. Money where the mouth is. That's part of my mantra. I mean, I don't mind being a hypocrite with a small h, but being a big hypocrite a big H hypocrite is something I try to avoid in life. Yeah, exactly. Well, Katrine, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with me and to chat about what FIAS has been and how it's affected our building industry and what we can look forward to in the future. And I hope at some point I can have you back on to talk about more things at some point later. But I do thank you so much for taking time out, and hope that you have a good rest of your summer here in America. I have to say, I know you learned. My wife is Dutch, and she spent her first number of years living in Boston. So she has a number of words that she says with a Boston accent because that's where she learned how to say them. And you said roof, which means to me that you learned how to say the word roof out in the Midwest.
True.
It's all good. Again, Katrine, thank you so much. And until next time, for all of my House Calls Vermont's buddies and friends and colleagues, this is Chris West. Until next week, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
I don't care if they trim or not.
We're back. Hey, everybody. So that was my interview with Katrine Klingenberg this past earlier this week, Monday. It was great to speak with her, and I think it was very insightful. Sometimes it's good to talk to people who are really dealing on the policy level and really moving large movements forward. And Katrine has been an amazing advocate and a successful advocate for Passive House as a way forward. So that's the show for today. Any comments, Jim, on the interview or on life, or is there something you wanted to share?
No, just looking forward as we move along, with the projects that we have going and how we develop the show as we move forward. Getting the comments out there from individuals of what they're wanting to hear more about would be really important to us. I think there's going to be really a lot of interest around the tiny house part because a local individual, I believe his name is Ethan, I can't remember his last name, who has a podcast nationally about the tiny house movement. I think engaging him in this is going to be really important. And, other topics always arise. It doesn't. We don't have to go looking for material. It's usually material finds us and opportunities find us. And so just stay tuned and stay informed for sure.
Yeah. And the interview with Katrine is also something that is going to be available or is available right now on our YouTube channel. So if you just wanted to see that or you wanted to share that bit without the rest of the show, it's all possible. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next week, it's Chris West.
And Jim Bradley. Have a great evening.
House Calls Vermont. Have a good day, guys. That's the end of the stream. Okay, that's